Yippity skippity. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Giants Collective, joined by our great crew, Adriana, Anthony, Entertainer. How we doing? How we doing, everybody? Happy hump day. It's February. The season has completed. It is finally over. The worst season in the history of New York Giants football finishes exactly the way it was scripted to finish. The freaking Philadelphia Eagles are champions of football. It makes me sick to my stomach to say it. So we'll go around the panel. Everybody knows how I feel. I can't stand the Eagles. Adriana, what would that feel like watching the Eagles and Saquon Barkley raise that Lombardi on Sunday?
Well, I turned it off when there was like a minute left, so I didn't watch any of that. I was like, I can't watch this. So I turned it off early. And what I will say is, thank God Saquon was not the MVP, because then everything after that would have been Giants and Saquon, where it's just like, enough is enough. Like, he won the Super Bowl, let him enjoy it. Keep the Giants out of it. Okay. We get it. We understand. Things went different, obviously, for both teams. It is what it is. But I would say I was just most surprised that their defense destroyed the Chiefs. Like, this whole season, I didn't think the Chiefs were that dominant. We know that they won like 9 games or something, or the 9 games that they had won in a row, or whatever it was, were all by a single score. We all knew about the questionable calls by the refs. Like, we knew about all these things, and they were not emerging as a powerhouse team. Like, you watch the Lions literally destroy teams, the Eagles, like, these teams were way more dominant throughout the season, but I just expected way more from them. Like, I thought it was going to be a close game. I thought they were going to pull it out by a field goal. And the fact that the Eagles defense dominated them was not what I expected. Disappointed to see a guy like Cooper DeJean, who I obviously would have loved on the Giants if they could have gotten their shit together and gotten him, would have been nice. But thank God for Kendrick Lamar, because he was the best part of the night. No question.
Anthony, how'd you feel about the game?
I'll second the halftime show sentiment. I loved SZA, and I wish SZA sang more, but great halftime show for me. Overall, the game was a disaster. It was super boring. Just hung out with the buddies, had some beers, and we pretty much just talked the entire time because there was nothing really fun to watch. One thing that I'll say, though, and this is on the topic of the Super Bowl, but off the topic of the game itself, my least favorite tradition every year here while doing content as a New York Giants content creator, after the Super Bowl every year, the comments always have this major shift where, what are you talking about? Why should the Giants do this? Why should the Giants do that? Did you not watch the Super Bowl? That's how teams win championships. Now it's just all flooded with, you have to draft Abdul Carter. You have to get an offensive lineman in round 2. It's like, no, we still got to do everything we were saying. Still got to get the quarterback. The one game that we watched that the Eagles won doesn't just completely change everything that the New York Giants had to do this offseason. Every single year, I swear that happens, where the comment sections just get flooded and everybody's like, that's how you win a championship. But it's always a different reason every year. I get it. You always have to build through the trenches. It's true. It's always been true. Nothing has changed just because the Eagles had a 7-sack performance in the Super Bowl. That was always been the mantra, was to build through the trenches. So just on that topic, that always frustrates me, but it is true. The New York Giants do need to get their trenches situated. The Eagles won with a great dominant offensive line, and their defensive line really showed up. But that's not news for New York Giants fans, and we shouldn't act like it is now. When we won those Super Bowls in 2007 and 11, dominant defensive lines. We've always known this. That's why the New York Giants traded a second-round pick for Brian Burns. They are trying to build through the trenches. There's no need to change course. They're trying to get on the right course. You just have to trust the process and see it through. And first and foremost, you have to get a quarterback.
Without question. Chris, I know you care about the Eagles the way I do. So how did it feel to you, that game?
I mean, it's horrible. I thought it was going to be a really competitive game, for sure. And I thought the Chiefs would find a way to close it out. I thought the Eagles had the better team going in, but Spagnuolo, obviously Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, I thought they had the advantages in the coaching staff and the quarterback department. It was very reminiscent, and I said it at halftime of the Bucs Super Bowl, when the Bucs played the Chiefs. Like Anthony was saying, the defensive line is what really stood out above all else in that game for the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, their offensive line always stands out, but the defensive line really stood out in that game. They completely swallowed them start to finish. Pat Mahomes didn't have a chance that entire game, and it was very similar to the Bucs Super Bowl. It's common sense. Like, you shouldn't need that game to teach you that, yes, you need a pass rush to win a Super Bowl. You do. We as Anthony said, we know it as Giants fans, and the Eagles do what Anthony always complains about. And Anthony's absolutely right when it comes to that. The Eagles don't care about need. The Eagles draft for the best available player on the board year after year after year after year. Every year you're like, wait, the Eagles drafted another defensive lineman in the first round? They don't care. They want to get the best players they can at the most important positions they can, and it really stood out in that Super Bowl. And the Giants certainly need to improve the defensive line. They certainly need to improve the offensive line. They certainly need a quarterback. But yeah, what I took out of that game is any smart football fan knows you can have the best quarterback in the world. The games are still won and lost in the trenches. And that's what stood out to me on Super Bowl Sunday. Obviously, a great quarterback helps, though.
Yeah. That was brutal. The funny thing about this is, for me, I mean, everyone on YouTube knows I hate the Eagles. I can't stomach them. And I always say I've got the best relationship with Eagle fans. It is such a love-hate relationship, man. It's so funny to me. The Eagle fans wouldn't know what to do without me constantly giving them shit, and vice versa. And there's some weird mutual respect, love thing going on between me and Eagle fans. It was a brutal game, even if you were not, if you were not rooting for the Eagles or whatever. It was a brutal game. It was boring. But I will say this. There's a couple things. Got to give the Eagles credit. I mean, there's no question. Totally dominant. The last two games, they scored 95 points against Washington and against Kansas City. Unbelievable. Their offense was really good. Their offensive line has been great for many years. But as you guys all mentioned, the defense, I don't remember seeing that dominant. I mean, they were done. The hell of the final score. Kansas City had 23 yards at the half. I'm thinking, and I'm older, I saw the 85 Bears dismantle the Patriots. Patriots had minus 10 yards at the half in Super Bowl 20. I saw the Ravens killed the New York Giants in Super Bowl 35. Not one of my better memories. But other than those two, I mean, there's been some really, really good defensive performances in a football game in my lifetime. Super Bowl, I don't know if that was really, really impressive. They were unbelievable. They were flying around. As soon as DeJean picked a pass off, ran it back, I said, this is done. Kansas City's offense was never explosive this year. It was a bad matchup for Kansas City. They can't run the football. And Patrick Mahomes,
they didn't even try to run it. They had one carry in like the first 25 minutes of the game.
Yep, that's what I'm saying. They were very predictable. And that Eagles pass rush was able to spin their ears back. And the most impressive thing, they didn't blitz one time. They got all that pressure with their front four. So to Anthony's point, yeah. You went in the trenches. To your point, Chris, yes, you beat the best player available. But for the Eagles, their best players available were big needs. They're cornerbacks. And they got Quinyon Mitchell. They got Cooper DeJean. They just know what they're doing. They are the blueprint of how to succeed in the NFL. You take the best players available in the draft. You go out there. You move the cap around. You get the best players to come in. When you start winning, those players want to come to you. They're going to take less to come to you because they want to win. It's not like they're hurting for money if they take a few $1 million less to go to a team that's going to win. So I got to give them credit. The other thing I'm going to say is this, and we'll move on. As much as it was gross to watch that game, I was not nearly as upset as I thought I'd be. I thought I'd be way more upset. I think when they won in 2017, it bothered me way more because it was their first one. It's kind of like when the Red Sox beat my Yankees in 2004. Okay. It was disgusting. It was their first championship in 86 years. I couldn't take it. It bothered me for a couple of years. They won in 2007. I was like, that sucks, but it didn't bother me the same. It's kind of the way Eagles are. And I'll say this about our division. We're the only division in football where each team has won a Super Bowl. Now each team has won at least two. This division is the best division in the history of the NFL. So we got that going for us, if nothing else. And on a different topic, because I saw Adriana brought this up in our little private chat, so I will want to get your opinion on this. I didn't see it because I didn't watch any of the pregame. I didn't watch anything of this game, guys, except for the game. I didn't watch pregame. I didn't watch halftime. I didn't watch postgame. I turned it off.
The commercials, by the way, I should have mentioned the commercials were bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think I laughed at like one commercial the entire night. Maybe two.
I tweeted out that maybe I'm just older, but I just think think the commercial
The
sucked.
seal commercial was pretty funny. Where it was weird looking that they had seal as a seal, but I might have chuckled at like one other commercial the entire night. I was let down with the commercials this year.
So supposedly, I've also seen other people put this on. What am I doing here? I've seen other people put this on, social media. So I guess I can't talk tonight, so forgive me. Michael Strahan was waving an Eagles flag around, rooting for the Eagles openly. A New York Giants legend, Ring of Honor, Hall of Famer. Well, technically not the all-time sack leader because Lawrence Taylor actually had a half more sack, but they didn't count sacks as a stat in 1981. So his 9.5 sacks somehow don't count. Regardless, he's one of the greatest players in the history of our franchise, bending the knee for Saquon and waving the Eagles flag. Anthony, what did you think about that?
I mean, it was pretty gross. It's not something that I wanted to see. It actually upset me quite a bit. But at the end of the day, I can't be upset with these former players for being upset with the team. And that's how they get their message across. That's how I interpret this whole thing. And I think Amani Toomer said something similarly. I think he was speaking with the New York Post. I'm not certain who he was speaking with, but I know Toomer was basically saying that was a warning shot. I think that was the quote, is that it was a warning shot from Michael Strahan. Like, this organization or the New York Giants has done so wrong by its players, so wrong by its former and current players and by the fans, that this was a way of saying, like, you better wake up and fix this because our loyalty is dying out here. And I think that we've seen that quite a bit. I mean, for the last week leading up to the Super Bowl, we all were talking about how there were Giants fans that were rooting for the Eagles. We thought that was shocking. We thought that was disgusting. We thought it was despicable. But then you see Strahan do that and you start to think about it. This team has been so bad and it's been so disrespectfully to the fan base bad. You can't be shocked when things like this happen. And you have to, as John Marin, as a New York Giants organization, take it as a wake-up call and really put the best foot forward and make some sort of a change. And I believe Strahan alluded earlier in the offseason that he felt like there should have been firings, like Joe Shane, Brian Dable maybe shouldn't have stuck around. I think maybe he's just frustrated with ownership of the New York Giants and the way that things have gone. So I don't know if that was the best way to get that message across. I obviously hated seeing it, but hey, the message has to get across somehow. And if this is how the former players and legends of the franchise are feeling, and if this is what they feel like they need to do in order to spark change inside of the organization, go ahead and do it, but it better spark some change.
Chris, what did you feel about the whole Strahan thing?
I wasn't happy. You never it's an embarrassment, right? He's one of the 3-4 greatest players in the history of the franchise going out there. And we're not talking about a guy that had a cup of coffee with the New York Giants. We're talking about a guy that was drafted by the New York Giants. He played his entire career as a New York Giant. He was the biggest leader on the team that won our 3rd Super Bowl. One of the greatest Giants in the history of the league, who was a lifetime Giant. To see him go out there the day before the Super Bowl, whenever it was, and go out and wave an Eagles flag. I get maybe he's trying to get a point across. To me, it felt like almost like a stand-up comic when a joke falls flat. Like I think he thought that he was doing something that would have been funny. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't get it. I think that, like Anthony said, I think there's a better way to get that point across. You don't have to go on national TV before the Super Bowl and wave the Eagles flag. I'm not dismembering, I'm not calling to, I saw some people on Twitter saying, oh, get rid of the retired jersey. I'm not calling for that. But I was not a fan. Let's put it that way. I was not happy that Michael Strahan did that.
Adriana, what was your feeling about seeing Strahan wave the old Eagles flag with pride?
Oh, so I didn't watch it either. I saw the clips of it afterwards and I was like, you have to be joking. My problem is the explanation that Toomer gave, because I don't believe for 1 second that if former players went into the building and sat down with John Mara and said, listen, I understand things have gotten a little off track here. This is how things went. You were here. Let me refresh your memory. This is how things went when we won Super Bowls. And this is how it was done. And this is how it was done correctly. Maybe you need to bring in an advisor. Maybe you need to make some changes with the coaches. Maybe you need to have people like me, former players, more involved. They're doing it with Chris Snee. They're allowing him to be very involved with the selection and scouting of offensive linemen. They are letting Eli Manning do it with the quarterback position. So why on earth would you not let Mike Michael Strahan do it, who's been in the building. I've seen him at training camp. Let Imani Toomer, who's also been at training camp, let him get involved with wide receivers. Let these guys more in on the building. And I don't know, let them have a say that way. But going out and waving the enemy's flag when they're in the Super Bowl is the biggest load of BS I've ever seen. And my problem with it is that they said it was a shot at management, but I don't think John Mara really cares that much about that. I think he's not sleeping at night because Saquon just won a Super Bowl with the Eagles. I don't think he really cares that Michael Strahan, is waving the flag. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I was more pissed off that I was like, you're literally just enraging the fans. Like, we're the people who all support you, and you're making us pissed off, not the front office. Like, I don't think the front office is going to go change their plans or whatever because Michael Strahan did that. Yeah. And I think it's one thing if Strahan has said like he thought that people should have been fired, then I applaud him for speaking out. But I haven't seen a lot of former players, Brandon Jacobs, Imani Toomer, who's all over Twitter. Carl Banks is very vocal on there, but there are some players who are very openly say that changes need to be made and this needs to be done and blah, blah, blah. And then there are players who don't do that. And for someone like Imani Toomer, who, again, maybe I missed this, has never been vocal about anything like that, you think waving a flag is going to do it? Like, I would rather you be all over Twitter this whole offseason and be like, this is what the Giants should have done to win. I sat down and had a conversation with John Mara about it, and he didn't listen to me for XYZ. Like, that's what they should be doing. I think waving the flag is trash.
Eagles fans are going to be using that 20 years from now. They're going to be showing that clip 20 years from now on social media, taunting the New York Giants. That was your guy. He waving an Eagles. Like, I agree. It's embarrassing for the fan base. And you may not realize it right now. 10 years from now, when people are constantly showing that clip, it's embarrassing for the fan base.
The one thing I'll say, does it make a difference that he was a player for the Giants? Doesn't mean he's a Giants fan, does it? I don't think that it's a good look by any stretch of the imagination. You don't want one of your legendary players waving your most hated rival's flag, like I said, with pride and openly rooting. He didn't play with Saquon Barkley. He wasn't teammates with. If it was a teammate, like an ex-teammate of his, you can almost understand it. Hey, I want this guy to win another championship, whatever. As one of my best friends. He don't know Barkley. I mean, probably knows him, but he didn't play with Barkley. There's no connection there. The one thing I'll say, again, it's just a bad look. Can you imagine Brandon Jacobs waving a Cowboys flag? No. Can you imagine Justin Tuck waving a Cowboys flag around? No. I mean, come on, man. Strahan's got to do a little bit better thinking. But then again, listen, I live in upstate New York. They practiced up here for 17 years, from 1996 to 2012. Obviously, he retired after 2007. I'm not going to sit here and say I ran into Strahan a bunch of times, but I can tell you this as a guy that did see him on a number of occasions. He was a total asshole. He was a big-time prick. He is a guy that has always been about himself. So this doesn't surprise me one bit. It seems to fit the personality that I remember when he practiced here. He was very rude to the fans. He was just a miserable bastard when he was up here. He didn't like training camp.
He hated training camp. He
hated training camp. Yeah. But no, we're not the ones making you do two-a-days. We're not the ones out there busting your ass. We're out there cheering you on. So, it is what it is. But that's, to me, Strahan's always kind of been about himself. That's just from what it's not like I know the guy, but from what I saw all those years up here when he was here, he kind of acted like that. So it is what it is. But it is a bad look for the franchise. And let
me ask you guys, what do you think was worse? And I guess we probably need another 8, 9, 10 years to let it digest because Tiki Barber was so long ago. What do you think was worse? What Tiki did on the way out or what Strahan did?
Well,
Tiki was ostracized by the fan base.
I was going to say what Tiki did was different because he was on the team at the time. Strahan's not on the team anymore.
That's when Tiki had retired when he came out and said.
Oh, I thought you meant like talking about retiring in the middle of the.
No, I'm talking about when he retired and he said the thing he said about Coughlin and Eli when he was a member of the media. Media.
Well, it's I don't know, man. That's tough. Different situations.
Yeah,
but without question, Tiki obviously had a grudge against the Giants at that time. Didn't care for Coach Coughlin. That's why I retired early. I don't know, man. I guess that it's kind of comparing apples to, or neither one of them is a good look. I can tell you that. I guess the difference is this: when Tiki did it, we won a Super Bowl next year. We forgot about it immediately. The Giants just lost 14 games.
He had egg on his face because of it.
Right.
When we won the Super Bowl, Strahan's not going to have an egg on his face because.
Well, hopefully he does. Hopefully next year.
5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
My problem is like you want to take shots at the front office. Like you're on Good Morning America and whatever, all this shit every day. Take shots at the front office all day when you're a media person. Same thing with Tiki. You guys want to do it in the media, fine, but like we're the fan base. We have struggled enough. The least that you could do is be nice to us. Like we're the ones who go to these fucking games day in and day out, waste our money to watch this stupid team, like pay attention to everything, go to training camps, blah, blah, blah. Like you don't need to kick us when we're down here. All right. Cut us a little bit of slack. Like I said, talk shit on the front office. They deserve it. All of us have the nerve to go on our podcast and say that we think everyone should be fired. And then I had to go look Joe Shane in the face at the Senior Bowl and be like, hey, Joe.
Hi, Joe. What kind of Starbucks you want, Jay? Joe, you got Starbucks today. Joey and his Starbucks.
Right. Like have a backbone. Come on.
Outside of Saquon not winning the MVP in the Super Bowl, is there anything that could have made this season worse? Anything. This has got to be the most embarrassing, humiliating, disgraceful year in the history of the Giants. And ironically, it is their 100th year anniversary.
I'll throw one thing in there that maybe could have made it worse, but I don't even know if it would have, because it was embarrassing the way that the Giants handled it. If Daniel Jones would have continued to play and gotten hurt, and we would have been stuck with the contract going forward, that might have made it worse.
I was going to say if Nabers got hurt or something towards the end of the year when they were playing for nothing and he got injured and it would have carried into the next season, that would have made it a lot worse. But thankfully he walked out of the season healthy.
All right. Speaking of former,
I said going into the year, we've never had a worse season in my life since I've been watching the team. 2000, what was it? The year that the Eagles won the first Super Bowl, 2017. That was by far the worst year for me as a Giants fan before this year, right? The whole Eli Manning debacle, the Eagles winning their first Super Bowl. You go in with playoff expectations going into the year. The team finishes with the second pick and they win like 2 games or whatever they won. That was by far the worst year. This year rivals it. It's very close. I would probably still slightly lean towards 17 because what you said earlier, Bad Dog, being that it was the Eagles' first Super Bowl and the fact that there were higher expectations going into that year than this year. But this year was very close, very close. It was a tough year. 2017
kind of gets offset because my kid was born that year, so it was a good year. But
yeah.
So off the field, that was great. On the field, it was absolutely terrible. Well, let's talk about former Giants. Before we get to future Giants, let's talk about past Giants again. And our friend Kadarius Toney. You remember Kadarius Toney? Remember Dave Gettleman? Chris, you brought it up. It's great, point. Micah Parsons. Well, we know the Eagles trade up and get Devontae Smith. We wanted Devontae Smith. Everybody knew we wanted Devontae Smith. Eagles knew it. Trade up, get it, kick us right in the balls. And then we have Micah Parsons. He is an absolute beast. Everybody knows it. He's a game changer. I do a video on talking about him. I'm not going to say he's Lawrence Taylor, but he's the same size as Lawrence Taylor. He's a game record like Lawrence Taylor. This guy is going to be an absolute beast. We don't want him. We want to trade back 9 spots and take Kadarius Toney because we're worried about Micah Parsons' personality or his issues off the field. Well, Kadarius Toney gets arrested today because he strangled a woman. January 14th, I think the day was. So, Chris, give us your opinion on this whole Kadarius Toney. At least he wasn't a Giant when this happened. I guess that's the good news.
Well, that's the best thing Joe Shane did since he's been a general manager. He traded him as soon as he got the job because he saw the disaster that Kadarius Toney was going to be. That was Dave Gettleman's parting gift, trading down and drafting Kadarius Toney. I was never enamored with him. I didn't hate the pick on draft night, but I remember we actually talked to our chat going into the year after Kadarius Toney's rookie year, and I said when we talked about who I thought the most overrated player on the team was, I said Kadarius Toney, and a lot of people in the chat killed me for it. turns out I was right on that. I'm wrong on a lot of things. I was right on that. I thought Giants fans jumped the gun way too early on him when he had that 170 yards against the Dallas Cowboys when they were up by 30 points and playing prevent defense. And he was a disaster. Start to finish with the New York Giants, it's going to go down as one of the worst decisions in franchise history to trade down from 11, bypass the opportunity to take Micah Parsons and Rashawn Slater. And what makes it worse, and this is speculation on our part, but it's pretty obvious with the stuff that came out from Penn State, and especially after what Micah Parsons said at the Super Bowl, that he said he was told by Gettleman that he was going to draft him if he fell to 11. That was probably after the stuff came out from Penn State, before rather the stuff came out from Penn State, and the Giants probably passed on him. Well, you passed on him for character concerns, but you traded down and you drafted Kadarius Toney. So it's like, it makes it even worse, the fact that you passed on Parsons, being that the primary reason was because you had character concerns. Nobody's had more character concerns since they've been in the NFL than Toney.
Adriana, what do you think about it? It's comical. It's comical. What do you think about this whole situation? Yeah,
I totally agree with Chris. It's absolutely mind-boggling to me that was Gettleman's reason, because I have so many questions about his scouting process and like what they actually did, because if you did any type of research on Toney, like, you are not going to tell me that there were 0 red flags. Like, there had to have been at least one.
I think there was stuff that came out after the fact. I can't recall what it was off the top of my head. Anthony's probably going to remember. There was stuff that came out after the fact on Toney before he was drafted by the Giants, I think. Yeah.
Oh, before he was drafted?
Before he was drafted by the Giants. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I remember stories coming out after the fact that there were red flags, not to this level where he was strangling a woman, but there was question marks in terms of his locker room and stuff like that. Yes.
It's truly insane to me. And what I get out of that is that Dave Gettleman did no research into these players' personalities and, I don't know, background checks or whatever it is they do to try to get to know these players. Because if they were so worried about what came out from Penn State about Micah Parsons, but then they weren't worried about what happened with Kadarius Toney, and if they saw one red flag from Kadarius Toney, they didn't do any more research, or they just took the Micah Parsons thing word for word and didn't do any more research into it, just truly insane to me. And again, if they didn't like Micah Parsons, like, they could have picked Slater, they could have picked literally anyone else instead of trading back for Toney. Like, that was the answer there. And the worst part, like Bad Dog says, is like, we all knew they wanted Devonta Smith and then they didn't get him. It's so horrifying. And I will say that is one of the only things that I really appreciate about Joe Schoen is that, you know, last year there was all this talk about JJ McCarthy, and on draft night, I'm like, oh my God, if they pick JJ McCarthy 6, I'm going to lose my mind. And then they didn't. And who knows if that all was smoke, whatever. I feel the same way about Sanders this year, that all the Giants Sanders hype is smoke. But at least I kind of feel like I'm not really sure what they're going to do at 3. And I feel like as of right now, that's the consensus across the board, because it's not being broadcast to literally everyone.
Anthony, what's your opinion on this whole Kadarius Toney thing?
Pretty much the same opinions that were already shared. I will say, Chris, the clarification on the red flag prior to him being drafted, he was suspended from UF football in 2018 for not living up to the Gator standard. If you don't know about UF, I don't think it's very hard to live up to the Gators. That's what I was going to say. That's got to be pretty hard to not live up to that standard.
I remember. I didn't remember the exact specifics, but I remember stories came out after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was another one a month prior to that suspension. He was pulled over while in possession of an AR-15. They didn't arrest him, but I don't know. So whatever. That's Kadarius Toney. The only thing that I have to say, because you guys really covered it all, is my number 89 New York Giants Kadarius Toney jersey that I own, I think has to go in the trash can by now. I got it because at the time I was like, you know what? My name is Tony. So even if he's bad, it's still cool, right? But now, probably not so
He's
cool.
giving you a bad name now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that
duct tape over it. I'm sure maybe one of the rookies this year will take 89.
It's also ironic that he did the same thing with DeAndre Baker. There was red flags about DeAndre Baker, and he traded up to get DeAndre Baker, and it was another total disaster. I just don't understand how one team can be this bad for so long with 3 different GMs and just not be able to figure this the hell out. It doesn't seem possible that you could have this much turnover in your front office and still remain this bad. I don't know when it's going to end. Perhaps it'll end when we get a quarterback. Now, there's all these rumors out there. They were around middle of the year. I don't really pay much attention. We're like, there's no way that's happening. So Matt Stafford is a big name here. We were talking about bridge quarterbacks. We've talked about Jameis Winston. We've talked about Russell Wilson. We've talked about Justin Fields. We've talked about Sam Darnold. We talked about a lot of different quarterbacks that could be the bridge. Is Matt Stafford a possibility, Adriana, to be a Giant? And what would the Giants have to give up to get him? Now, I know they're mentioning first-round picks. I don't want to give up a first-round pick to get Matt Stafford. But is it possible that Matt Stafford would be a New York Giant for the right price?
I get the theory that, like, as long as the price is right, teams will trade anyone. But my thing is the Rams were one play away from making the NFC Championship, and they would have won that game. I guarantee it. If it was not snowing or if they were in LA. And I just feel like for them to be that close and then be willing to trade away Cooper and Matt Stafford doesn't make any sense to me. I get the theory behind it. And I think that Cooper is one thing. He's probably getting older. Like, they're going to do what the Giants should have done with Saquon, is they're going to trade away someone before they become a free agent, which is the smart thing to do. So I could see the Cooper Cup thing, but I just don't see it with Stafford. And I know that he's coming towards the end of his contract, but I just don't think it's also going to be as simple as like only giving away a first round pick, which I don't think is a good idea, knowing next year that the quarterback class is going to be better, that we're probably going to be in a position to get a good quarterback next year, realistically. And I understand that this front office doesn't have time to wait and they can't think about that. I just think that also our cap space is finally in a good position. I don't really see Joe being willing to take on Stafford's contract at this point for the amount of money that it is, for the age that he is. Also, he's not really the most mobile, and Daboll's scheme is going to focus around a mobile quarterback. So I don't know. For me, there's way more cons than pros when I think about the reasons why the Giants would do it. So I don't really see it. I also think when people are like, oh, they just hired his brother-in-law, like, I don't really think that means anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
In the NFL, everyone's related to everyone. It's a nepotism-based business. We all know this. So I don't think that makes a difference. So I don't know. I don't see them doing it. And if they have to give up a 2026 first, I wouldn't do that personally.
Anthony, is it possible he's a Giant?
I really don't think it is possible. I don't see why Matt Stafford would want to leave, as Adriana said, a team that was just on the cusp of going to the NFC Conference Championship game. There are legitimately 3 plays in that game that if they went the other way, we might be talking about the Rams being Super Bowl champions right now. So I think you have to keep that in mind. From Stafford's perspective, it makes no sense. And a long-term outlook, it doesn't make sense for either team or either party, rather, because Stafford is going to want to end his career to whichever team he goes to if he does get traded. And he's going to want to win before he ends his career. And there are Giants fans who feel like trading for Stafford makes his team an overnight juggernaut. But if you compare this roster to the one that the Los Angeles Rams have, it's a night and day difference. And that's not even accounting for the fact that it's Brian Daboll versus Sean McVay, one of the brightest offensive minds possibly ever to coach on the sidelines of an NFL franchise. If you look at this Giants team, I get it. The idea of pairing Matt Stafford with Malik Nabers is really exciting, but you still have to figure out the offensive line. You still have to see if Tyrone Tracy is going to take a step going into year 2. You still have to see what the wide receiver 2 situation looks like. And wide receiver 3 is also neat. Tight end, Theo Johnson. Let's see what he does in year 2. Stop preventing you from upgrading there. Defensive line needs work. Linebacker core needs work. Secondary needs all of the help in the world. This roster is so far away from competing, and there are Giants fans who legitimately believe that trading for Matt Stafford makes them a contender overnight. I get it. The quarterback can do a whole lot, but it can't do that much. And if you're just going to trade for Stafford, blow up your salary cap space for the next 2 years to bring him on, forego the opportunity of drafting a quarterback as a result of bringing in Stafford, what are you doing? You are completely screwing over your future, and that is how you land in the situation that the New York Jets are in, because it's pretty much the same situation. Bringing in an old aging veteran like Rodgers, clearly past his prime. I'm not saying Stafford is necessarily past his prime because he could sling it. He's still great, but it's the same roster building concept that just blew up in the face of the Jets. Don't copy that. Copy instead what the Commanders just did, what the Patriots just did. These other teams that have bright futures because they slowly built up a roster. They kept a bunch of reserve cash and cap space for the future. Then they got a rookie quarterback, plugged him in there. Then they bridged him along, and now he's starting, and now they're good. So, well, not necessarily the Patriots, but the Commanders, absolutely. And we've seen it time and time again. So I just don't think it makes sense for either party. Again, I love Matt Stafford. I have gotten into so many arguments, just, talking ball with friends over the years. I've always been the biggest Stafford advocate. I say this all the time. I think he's the most underrated player in league history. He never got the credit that he deserved throughout his time in Detroit, and he's been an absolute star with the Rams. So I love Matt Stafford. He does not make sense for the New York Giants, and the New York Giants make little to no sense for him. So I don't think it'll happen. If it does, I'll reevaluate my opinion. But right now, I don't think it's even a realistic possibility.
But Joe Jane says we're close, Anthony. He says we're close. I know we're close too, but he says we're close.
I was very angry when he said that because I thought it was so untrue. And it's so ironic that he said that, and then that losing streak just piled up as soon as he said that. But the Giants, you are right. They might feel like they are close, and they might make a move like this. But again, I just don't think that Stafford is actually available. Why the hell would the Rams trade him away? What's their alternative at quarterback if they trade away Stafford? It just doesn't make sense.
They're not picking behind the draft.
This isn't the NBA. It's not the NBA. You don't see the Luka Doncic trade happen. Like superstars get traded all the time in the NBA. Just they always move teams. It happens. If you look at European football, it happens all the time. These superstars, that doesn't happen like that in the NFL. It's very rare. When Tom Brady left the Patriots, it was monumental. It shook up the entire sport. That doesn't happen every 2 years. So it's not going to happen with Stafford, in my opinion. He's going to retire Los Angeles Rams quarterback, and he actually still, I think, has a chance to add another ring to his resume if he stays in LA.
Chris, is it possible Stafford is a Giant?
Anything's possible. But when I first started hearing these rumors, like a month ago, like people were talking about it I laughed at it. I'm like, this it makes zero sense. It's not happening. And then this past week, I started to see like real insiders, like at least like tease the idea of it being a possibility. Like today, you saw Daniel Jeremiah bring it up. You saw Adam Schefter bring it up. And then I'm like, is this a thing? Could this like actually happen? And to me, it makes even less sense for Matt Stafford than it does the New York Giants. At least the New York Giants, I would completely disagree with the decision. I think it would be a stupid thing to do. But at least with the Giants, I could say, okay, maybe like if I'm trying to reach for something, Shane's trying to save his job. Maybe Shane doesn't believe in any of these quarterbacks. Maybe he doesn't believe in Sanders. Maybe he doesn't believe in Cam Ward. And maybe he's like, well, I'm willing to give this guy $50 million a year, which is what it would take to keep him, because there is no way in hell if Matthew Stafford was ever going to come here, which he's not going to, but if he was ever going to come here, that he would give the Giants a penny of a discount. He would make the Giants extend him and give him as much money as possible. He would view this as a retirement plan, as a pension. That's the only draw. If the Giants were willing to give him more money than anybody else in the league and the Rams couldn't work out an extension, that's the only way it would happen. It makes no sense from Matthew Stafford's perspective outside of that. You're in a position where you can win right now, and there's other teams, if you wanted out of LA, that would be a much better situation for you to win, like the Pittsburgh Steelers. The New York Giants are picking third. They're in a position to draft a quarterback. Be honest with yourself if you're watching this. If the Giants give up draft capital and extend Stafford, which is what I think it would take, I don't think they'd have to give up a first-round pick if they took on the contract. Maybe it's 2 seconds. Are we close at all to the Philadelphia Eagles? And if we're not, what are we talking about? Why are we doing that? Why are we giving up draft assets to bring in a 37-year-old quarterback so he can mentor a second-round Jackson Dart? Like, at that point, if you're going to trade for Matthew Stafford, you better be all in. You better not be drafting Jackson Dart. You better be trying to win a Super Bowl. Like, this is a Kerry Collins-like move, like a 3 or 4 year stopgap. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think the better route is what we've talked about on this show consistently. Draft your quarterback at 3, even one of these guys, and go and get a guy like Jameis Winston to be his mentor for the first 6 to 8 games. That's what I think they're going to do. I think this Matthew Stafford is nonsense. I think that there's nothing to talk about right now, and people are floating out rumors.
Agreed. Real quick, we'll talk about this last one. I just thought about this, and then we'll get to these super chats. Thank you for coming in. If you haven't done so, guys, girls, hit the thumbs up because it does help out the channel a lot. Subscribe, all that good stuff. Obviously, end of the month, the combine happens and free agency. Then we'll really start rolling here. But obviously, we didn't talk about this because this didn't happen last time we were here. And we'll start with Anthony this time. How'd you feel about Eli Manning not making the Hall of Fame?
I mean, I'm just pissed about it. I think it's such bullshit. When you look at what he did for the league, when you look at, I get all the different arguments against him, but it felt like everybody was focusing on what he didn't do rather than what he did. And I think that's such backwards logic. Look at what he accomplished, not what he didn't accomplish. Don't say, oh, well, he didn't have an all-pro season. Well, he didn't make this many Pro Bowl teams, but he made 4 Pro Bowl teams. He won 2 Super Bowls. He's in a very elite class of players who have 2 Super Bowl MVPs to his name. He is a Hall of Famer. He should have been first ballot. But I will say this, none of it made sense to me. Luke Kuechly should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Adam Vinatieri should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Terry Holt should have gotten in. All those guys were worthy, Eli Manning included. Yeah, everybody was worthy. They all should have gotten in. And I don't know. I guess to me, it just felt like the panel was on some bullshit. They feel like they got to be all selective because they're prestigious and pretentious is how I feel about it. So fuck the panel, fuck the Hall of Fame. Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer in my books.
Chris, that's a tough act to follow. It's like batting after Mickey Mantle. What do you?
Well, you know how I feel. I think Eli Manning should have went in first ballot. I if you believe the guy's a Hall of Famer, I don't get this whole first ballot, fifth ballot, seventh ballot. If you think the guy's a Hall of Famer, put him in the damn Hall of Fame. And at the end of the day, the story of the NFL is everybody always says can't be told without Eli Manning. Like it would be literally like ripping out in a complete chapter of the story of the NFL if you didn't put Eli Manning in the Hall of Fame. Say what you want about the guy. The guy got it done when it mattered most, and he did it twice. He won 2 Super Bowl MVPs. He's one of only 6 quarterbacks to ever do it. He should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he certainly should have been in the top 10 of the players that they voted for. It felt like the committee was trying to make an example to say, we know you're going to get in at some point, but we're going to make it a point to go above and beyond to not even put you in the top 10 so that we can hammer home the point that you're not a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's what it felt like to me. He's going to get in. It may be in 5 years. It may be in 6 years. He's going to get in. We know he's going to get in. But yeah, it was a joke that he wasn't in the top 10. You're talking about a guy that won 2 Super Bowl MVPs, a quarterback, and people want to talk about the stats. Well, maybe some of those stats are skewed because he played in the windy conditions of the Meadowlands. Maybe some of those stats are skewed because he was playing 220 games straight where he was dinged up for a lot of those games when a lot of quarterbacks were sitting out. So, stats only tell so much of the story. And Eli Manning's a big part of the story of the NFL. He belongs in the Hall of Fame and he'll be there one day.
Adriana, what was your feeling about them dissing Eli Manning?
Agree with everything. Just the whole thing is total bullshit. I feel like they same thing. Like they were trying to stick it to him like, oh, you'll get in at some point. But again, it's like, if you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer. Why does it matter if you get in now versus 5 years from now? I just think that's so stupid. Also, the whole stat thing is so annoying to me. Like the 500 record, like last time I checked, he's not the kicker. He doesn't make tackles. He's not the defense. Like it's a team sport. And to put all of that on the quarterback is insane to me. I understand it's the most important position, but it's not a solo sport. There are other players in the Hall of Fame who also have a 500 record or less. There are also a shitload of quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame who have a worse touchdown to interception ratio. They have significantly less passing yards than him. He also leads the entire postseason ever for the most amount of passing yards, which is more than Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. The whole thing is bullshit. It's so stupid. And I think that they just were trying to prove a point for God knows whatever.
And I think it's good for the league that he didn't get in because it's gonna be a topic now. Every time the NFL loves being talked about. Anything that they could be talked about, it's gonna keep them in the headlines. Is Eli Manning gonna get in? Let's have this debate again in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So from that standpoint, I think it's good for the league as well because it makes the Hall of Fame a constant topic, a constant debate whether or not this guy's a Hall of Famer.
It's bullshit. He's not a Hall of Famer. Don't they normally elect 5 people to the Hall of Fame? Why do they only elect 4 this year? What the hell was that? And to me, I'm sorry. Sterling Sharp getting in over Eli Manning. He played 6 years, 7 years. What did he ever win? Did he ever win anything? His stats aren't great. He was good for 2 years or 1 year. He had one great year. You're putting him in over Eli? But come on, man. It's politics. It's crap. We know that the media hates the Giants. They've always hated the Giants. Why is Tom Coughlin not in the Hall of Fame? Why is Tiki Barber not in the Hall of Fame? We talked about this the last time we were here. How many Hall of Famers are actually from the Giants? Taylor, Strahan, Carson. In my lifetime, they've won 4 Super Bowls as a team.
They've won the
Nobody else is
second
going up.
most Super Bowls, man, Doug. The second most Super Bowls in the NFL since 1986, and they have 3 Hall of Famers.
It makes no sense. None.
That's crazy.
They hate the Giants. The fan base hates the Giants right now, too. I understand it. I'm pissed. Simon Daggy says, it still hurts. I live in Eagles territory. Oh, it's got to be awful. That's got to be awful. I don't know how you do it walking around all those people that just can't spell. It's that would drive me insane. I can't do it. I get so mad when people can't spell. And we know Eagle fans notoriously, even their own mayor couldn't spell Eagles. So it just speaks to the education or lack thereof of that city in general. So God bless you dealing with those people every day of your life. Chris, our intern's here, and he says, do you guys think Nabers leaves to play with his bestie if the Giants are still bad 5 years from now? I could see it happening. I'm going to start with this and just say I can't look ahead 5 years from now. I can't. I don't know.
Yeah,
5 years is a long time.
I'll piggyback off that. It's impossible to know, and I understand why you feel that way because you've seen so many great Giants. Saquon Barkley and Odell Beckham right there, right? Both skill position players both leave the Giants after basically the conclusion of their rookie contract. Even though we did give an extension to Odell, we actually traded him. He didn't voluntarily leave. Even though I could argue, I think he was trying to work his way out here. He was talking about how he wanted to play with the Rams. But regardless, I get what you're going, right? Because it hasn't been an ideal circumstance. If this continues, I mean, I'll answer your question. If the Giants are a 3-win team, a 4-win team in 4 or 5 years, and it's constantly the way it's been, yeah, he's going to stay here. He's going to look for greener pastures, as would anybody. So you got to hope it's going to get a lot better, and you got to hope that they find their quarterback and they get it right. But Malik Nabers, to me, is incredible talent. I'm still thrilled that the New York Giants drafted him. I'm not having buyer's remorse and saying we should have drafted Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy. No, I think Malik Nabers is a special player, and he's going to be a special player for a really long time. Hopefully, his entire career in a New York Giants uniform. We got to get him a quarterback that could get him the football.
Yep.
Anthony, anything to add? Or
if the Giants suck, everybody's going to want to leave, especially the superstar players. It's how it is for every team. So, yeah, it's a fear of mine, and yeah, we probably will suck because we're the New York Giants. And we seem to always suck, but, you just have to hope they turn it around soon. And
yeah, 5 years is a long time. So
once the wins start coming, so do the talented players. That's what we keep saying about Washington. Everybody's connecting Washington to Myles Garrett, connecting Washington to T. Higgins, everybody. It's because they're good now. So once we get good, the players will want to stay and we'll bring new ones in.
Washington's trending at this point is how we would say it. Bear, thank you, brother. If we sign Darnold, they're not going to sign Darnold. I'll be shocked if they sign Darnold. Would you lean more on getting BPA and try to get a quarterback in the later rounds or still get 1 of 3? I still want 1 of 3 if that's the best player available of 3.
Yeah.
I would if it's Ward. If Ward is gone and it's between Sanders or Carter, I'm probably taking Carter and getting a quarterback in a later round and then just planning on getting a quarterback next year. If they sign Fields or Winston, neither one of them are getting like a 3 or 4 year deal. So I'd rather take that risk and get best player available. This team has a lot of holes to fill.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that point. I'm going to speak from Shane's perspective. I think we're taking a quarterback. Thinking from the fan perspective, I think Abdul Carter's the best player in this draft. And I think Travis Hunter's the second best player in this draft.
Agreed.
If I wasn't thinking from the mindset of Shane and you asked me what I think the Giants should do, I would be tempted to do what you suggested and maybe sign both of those guys. Sign like kind of what the Steelers did when they brought in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, bring in 2 legitimate stopgap quarterbacks, the best player available because we do have a lot of holes. Now, Shane's not going to do that. Shane knows his job's on the line. He knows he needs a face of the franchise. And if Shedeur Sanders is there, I expect him to take him. So, but if you're asking me, like, I didn't have to think from the mindset of a GM, and I'm just saying what's probably the most likely best case outcome, unless one of those guys become a top 5 or 6 quarterback in the league. Yeah, Abdul Carter's going to be a transcendent edge rusher in the NFL, and Travis Hunter's a generational there are a few prospects that actually weren't that term generational. He's one of them. So. Those are special players. So I certainly understand the fans' perspective that want to go that route. But I'm telling you what I think is going to happen based off the variables. And I think we're going with a quarterback.
Anthony, what do you think?
I think they should go for a quarterback. Even if you sign Darnold or Fields or Russell Wilson, whoever, you're setting yourself up for short-term success. That's great. You need long-term success as well. And that's what the rookie quarterback is going to do. And you also have to remember, it doesn't hurt to have 2 good quarterbacks rather than 1 or potentially 0. You sign the quarterback, a Darnold or a Fields. What if they stink? What's your backup plan then? You better hope that you've drafted somebody as your backup plan who can hopefully become your long-term answer and solution. So you guys know my opinion. Throw darts at the board, stack quarterbacks until you get it right. If you get it wrong, try again. Keep trying over and over again until you find a franchise guy.
And when he says throw darts at the board, he's not insinuating that he wants Jackson Dart, just so you know.
No.
Larry, thank you, brother. My prediction, they draft the quarterback, and Joe will sign someone like Mac Jones, younger quarterback, just to be happy on a team for the age position value for 2025. Well, Fields is young. I would much rather Fields, but somebody has mentioned Mac. I don't see the Giants bringing in Mac Jones.
I've never been a fan of Mac Jones. Yeah.
It's the Dable connection, though. Dable
That's
coached
true.
him at
That's
Alabama.
True. Good point.
So,
yeah.
We'll
I
see.
can see it then. Yeah, it's a good point, Anthony.
Let's hope that's not the guy that they bring in. Please. God almighty. Mac Jones. No. We already had one Jones here. We don't want another one, okay? We already dealt with, and I saw on Instagram again. I just saw the Daniel Jones video, the draft reaction pop up again, and I just sit there saying to myself, Chris, and I will never, ever live that down. That'll always be a stitch in time when the time the Giants drafted Daniel Jones, and
I never want to do that again. I want to be so happy this year when we take Shore Sanders and when we take Abdul Carter. Like I just want to be.
They take Jackson Dart third overall. I might Daniel Jones.
Oh my God, that might be worse than Jones.
I'll break my TV if they draft Jackson.
Mark, thank you, brother. Salute to the Fabulous Four. We appreciate you, my friend. The Stafford rumors. I agree. The Stafford rumors, like Chris said, it's the Super Bowl's over. There's really nothing to talk about. They're just trying to get people to click on something. They're just making stuff up at this point. It's their job to do so. Don J, thank you, my friend. He says, one of the biggest issues on this team has a big problem in player development. Players leave New York and they ball out elsewhere. It's very dumb. It's a great point. What do you guys attribute that to? Like, why does it seem like we can't develop players and they go to other teams and succeed? Is it because they're more of a product about the pieces around them, where when you're on a better team, you don't need to stand out as much. Maybe there's not as much pressure on you, or is there something to the fact that other coaches can get better, development out of these players?
I think it's a combination of many things. There's many factors, coaching being a major one. I think, especially when we look at quarterbacks who get drafted in certain situations, then years later, they get into a new situation, they become a good player. Situation really is everything. And we say that a lot about the quarterback position. Don't say it enough about all these other positions as well, but situation matters more than anything. I don't care how good of an NFL prospect you are coming out in the draft. If you don't get drafted into the right situation to nurture your talent, develop you, you're not going to be successful. But then I think the other major point to this that probably doesn't get discussed enough, but it probably, there's some chatter about it. It's New York. And that's really what it boils down to. The pressure here is different. The amount of scrutiny that these players face from New York media, from Giants fans. Think about how many content creators we have talking about the New York Giants. We're just 4 of us, and there are so many. That's not normal. Like, Giants fans, they only focus on the Giants, so it feels like, oh, every team probably has this. They don't. I've got friends of mine, or one of my friends is a huge Ravens fan. Shout out to Cameron. He watches the show because there are no Ravens shows for him to watch. So he watches all the Giants shows that I do. So
we're sorry, really, Cameron, because I would much rather talk about the Ravens.
Right.
The Giants were as good as the Ravens, so we'd have
I might have to start up a Ravens show, Fireside Ravens next. But anyway, I'll connect that to another piece of information. When I spoke to Drew Lieberman, who is a outside of the league wide receivers and pass catching coach who worked with Darius Slayton for the last several years and worked with Evan Engram, the message that he gave to us was Evan could not succeed in New York. The pressure there, the bullying, it was way too much for him. And he found great success in Jacksonville, and that's great. But basically the message being some players are simply not built for it. Their personality is just not a match. The confidence isn't there when they walk into MetLife Stadium and they hear all those boos and they see all those angry fans. And unfortunately, we're all angry fans right now. So it's going to be even more difficult to get players in the right situation because we're not the right situation for most players. We need players who transcend the situation. And those are really hard to come by. And that's how you get into the cyclical nature of being a bad football team year in and year out. And that's unfortunely where we are as New York Giants fans. But a lot of it has to do with the intensity of the Big Apple.
Anthony, you mean to tell me that having a beat reporter like Pat Leonard try to, get clickbait quotes if you're a player is not appealing? You mean to tell me that if you're a player of the New York Giants in the first game this season, 3 plays in, the entire stadium is booing you? That's not an ideal scenario. You hit it on the head with Evan Ingram. I constantly said that he was not, there are certain players that are not built for New York. One other thing I want to add to this that I think is a big reason why our players haven't developed. Obviously, the obvious answer is coaching. Lack of continuity, though. Not just with the head coach, with the position coaches. Think about all the different offensive line coaches that Andrew Thomas has had since he's been here. Think about all the different wide receiver. When you have constant turnover with the coach, Brian Burns said it. Brian Burns came out and said it before they made the decision on Joe Shane and Brian Dable. He said, I'm begging that they don't fire these guys because I never had any continuity with the Carolina Panthers, and we never grew as a football team because of it. I think that's a big part of it, too. When you have constant turnover and these guys are learning a completely new playbook the next year, a completely new scheme, a completely new blocking scheme for the offensive line, bringing in a new defensive coordinator, that has a lot to do with it too. And you bring a new, you look at the Jerry Reese under Dave Gettleman, we've actually retained some of his players. The only player that we really retained over the second half of Jerry Reese's career was Sterling Shepard. It was like constant, and of course Beckham, but it was like constant flipping new players every 2 or 3 years. So that's a major part of it too. There's been no continuity.
And if you notice, that's a pattern of all bad teams.
Yeah.
All of them do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's insanity. It's crazy. John, thank you, my friend. Outside of the Knicks, currently all New York sports is fucked with stupid GMs. Shane, Drury, Cashman, Giants, Rangers is the same bullshit. Eli's the first ballot Hall of Famer. Can't argue with any of that except for the fact the Yankees and Mets are both very good, and there's a good possibility they may in the World Series this year. I'll say that. New York sports actually isn't bad. The Knicks have played well. The Rangers fell off a cliff. That was terrible. The Giants, the football teams here suck. That's
baseball teams are great.
The baseball teams are very good. The Knicks are just inconsistent, but they're also pretty damn good. So I don't know about all New York sports. The baseball is holding us up right now. I will say that, but yeah. Agreed with pretty much the rest of it. The football is pathetic here, the city-wise, because obviously Buffalo is a part of New York. Buffalo is not bad either. I still have no idea how Kansas City beat them. No clue.
Chris, good point. I'll throw that out there. Liberty, they won the championship this year, didn't they?
Right. Yes.
Give them credit too. So I'm a big St. John's fan. Basketball, they're playing really well. Rick Pitino's a big story. So not everything's doom and gloom in the New York sports.
It's the football. The football's really bad.
The football's bad.
And with that said, since the football is so bad, we are going to get out of here. Hours fly by, man. I swear they fly by. Just so you guys and girls know, starting in March, we are looking at 2 shows a week. We haven't nailed down the exact days that we're going to do the 2 shows, but it will be 2 shows a week. So we haven't decided the format yet. We're working on that, but expect 2 shows a week beginning in March. Obviously, there'll be a lot more to talk about with the combine. It'll be finished when we start our show in March. Free agency will just be happening the second week. I believe that will be the last day of free agency or the first day of free agency, not including the tampering that happens March 10th. Then obviously we get ready for the draft. So there's going to be a lot more to talk about. So we're looking at 2 shows in the off season. So that should be awesome. Tell your friends, tell everybody you know about Giants Collective, hit the thumbs up, subscribe. It costs nothing to do so. And with that said, we're going to get out of here and let you enjoy the rest of your hump day. So for Adriana, Anthony, Entertainer, it's a bad dog. Enjoy the rest of your hump day. We out.